The NFL's preseason is here, where optimism runs wild, nostalgia hits hard, and every fan thinks their team's just one trade away from greatness. And that's no different for fans of the NFC South, the division that we are previewing and predicting today. Welcome back, or welcome to America's Sports. I am your host, Ty. The truth is, though, the NFC South has belonged to one team for each of the last 4 seasons. But the talent and the know-how is here in the NFC South, as the BUCS, the Falcons, and Carolina in the last 10 years, each of them have at least gone to a Super Bowl. And for these division videos, well, I got a game for you guys to play along with me. It's real simple, man. For every division video, you're going to pick the over-under for every single team in the division, and you're going to predict what place each team will come in the division. We will see if you can indeed beat me and everyone else on the leaderboard for every divisional video and also overall. It was pretty well received in our first video on the AFC West, so you can check right up here. So be sure to comment on this and all the other videos. All right, that's it. Let's get into it. Finishing last year was the Carolina Panthers with a 5-12 overall record, 2-4 record in the South, and they had a minus 193 point differential. This year they ranged from plus 380 to a plus 425 to win the division, and their win total is at 6.5. What can I say about the Panthers that hasn't already been said about disasters? Look, the last few years have been really bad. We're not about to sit up here and pretend like, things are just really good here in Carolina. They were 23rd in the NFL in points per game, and they were 30th in passing yards per game last year. But believe it or not, the defense might have been worse. They had about an average rush game. That's about the only good thing you could say about last year. Let's just throw last year away and not even think about it. Nah, guys, I'm totally just playing. There's a defensive overhaul here, and I think they kind of have to be better. I mean, you really got to like this list here. Safety Trayvon Moehrig comes from the Raiders and signs with them to replace Woods, and I think he's just as good, possibly an upgrade. Moehrig has played in all 17 games in 3 of his first 4 years. They went ahead and got not 1 but 2 defensive tackles. One is Tershawn Wharton, who had 6.5 sacks a year ago, and he could be a breakout player. And then you also bring in 2 linebackers who are very productive on their respective teams as well, and that's just on defense. On offense, they got running back Rico Dowdle, who was with the Dallas Cowboys a year ago. And they also had some key re-signings on the offensive line, and they also re-signed tight end Tommy Tremble. All 3 to me were important re-signings. I don't believe in this notion of Super Bowl or bust for every single team. That's just not true. Obviously, they want to win a Super Bowl, but there is not a soul, even most Carolina fans, that are going to pick Carolina to go to the Super Bowl. Going to the playoffs would be a massive success story for the Carolina Panthers. And same with Bryce Young. For Bryce Young, this is a make it or break it year, in my opinion. Actually, I think the term is make or break, not make it or break it. But you get what I'm saying. I mean, look at this. Jahmyr Gibbs rushed for more touchdowns than Bryce Young passed for last year. That is a fact. Now, look, Bryce Young did not start in all of those games. He played in 14. And look, I'm not here to bash on any players and any player specifically, but we do have to call things out as we see them. So yeah, man, a lot of this does come down to the growth and development of Bryce Young. I want you to comment below if you think I'm being over dramatic about this. Do we need to see improvements in year 3, or is Bryce Young still going to be the guy moving forward? Now, PFF ranks the offensive line at number 11 and their defensive line at number 28. And normally I somewhat agree with PFF, but I don't agree with the O-line or the D-line with Carolina really at all here. Carolina was able to cut down on the sacks a lot, and Chuba Hubbard was able to get going in the run game. So I do like where the offensive line is headed, but my biggest difference is I think of the defensive line. Carolina at 28, I think this defense is going to be better. It kind of has to be better than last year, like I already said, right? But 28th, nah, man. I'm putting them somewhere at the 2019 spot. And then I come over and I look at the schedule. 3 of the first 4 games are on the road, and that fucking sucks. But the first 6-7 games, I could talk myself into being winnable games. However, I do have Carolina's team being a better football team than last year's team. And I'll say another thing. If PFF is right about this offensive line for the Panthers, then I think they could challenge this division for as high as second place in it. I've got Carolina in third place in the division. I do have them with a 2-4 divisional record. But I've got them over the 6.5. I do. I like them right at 7, though. I like them at 7 and 10. All right, moving on to the next one. To all of y'all in the armchair army out there, make sure you comment what you think is going to happen in this division. Finishing third place in the NFC South due to a technicality was the New Orleans Saints, with a 5-12 overall record, who, believe it or not, started 2-0 last year. This year, they range from a plus 1,000 to a plus 1,500 to win the NFC South, with their win totals at 5.5. All right, when we talk about wanting to forget about the year before and just wanting to move on into 2025, New Orleans is probably number one in line for that shit. This is a team that, there's nobody in the NFL that quits, I don't think, as where in the NBA there are teams who are really trying to manage losses. The NFL doesn't really have that problem. Everybody's trying to get paid. No one's trying to get fired. So I'm not going to say that they quit, but they definitely did not look the most inspired at the end of the year. After starting 2-0, they lose 7 straight, and really only a few of those games were close. A lot of those were beatdowns, though. And they had some guys retire, so we had to talk about the departures because this hits really hard. Honey Badger himself, safety Tyrann Mathieu, has retired. Quarterback Derek Carr retired as well. And on the offensive line, Ryan Ramczyk also. And God bless Derek Carr for basically giving the Saints $30 million back. Because I tell you right now, there is no chance in hell that I'm doing what he did. You have a better chance of getting struck by lightning and then later on that day getting attacked by a great white shark in the middle of fucking Nebraska. Anyways, it all kind of worked out. They basically just went ahead and gave that money to Justin Reed. Like the Honey Badger, Justin Reed comes from Kansas City to New Orleans. Aside from retirements, DB Marshawn Lattimore is finally not with New Orleans as he got traded to Washington. And another DB in Paulson Adebo went to New York, the Giants. And backup running back Jamal Williams is also no longer with the team. New Orleans did come up with a plan for these losses in the secondary, though. I did already mention Justin Reed, but they were also able to get another safety in Julian Blackmon on a 1-year deal. On offense, they were able to get offensive lineman Will Clapp to another 1-year deal, and they also brought wide receiver Brandon Cooks back to NO, where it all started for him. And funny enough, where it all started for Will Clapp, too. But unfortunately, I have bad news, as in the middle of making this video, Will Clapp is reported to miss significant time this year with the Saints already, man. And they also had a lot of draft picks in the 2025 NFL Draft. They had 6 picks in the first 4 rounds, and 4 of those picks were on defense, one of them being a quarterback, which I figured they were going to get a quarterback, but I could not believe that they waited so long to get a quarterback. I think it's very possible that the rookie, Tyler Shuck, ends up being the starter for this team for this year. Because, look, I don't know what New Orleans fans think, but I personally am not in love with Spencer Rattler. PFF has the offensive line ranked at number 22, and they've got the defensive line ranked number 32. That is dead last for the people counting at home. I mean, hey, each of the last couple of seasons, they have started off 2-0, but I don't think that's the case this year, man. And they do get to play Carolina twice. They get to play both New York teams. Tennessee, they get Miami at home. But I could see it starting really bad for them, and they kind of do the same thing that they did last season. Except this time without that 2-0 impressive start. Every NFL team has a chance to surprise some people, but this would be the most surprising team. Look, I'm not shitting on anybody. That's not what I do this for. I'm just giving my honest take. Yeah, so I've got the Saints in 4th place, and the over-under at 5.5. I'm actually going under this. Unless they start like 2-2 or something like that, I really don't know how they win 6+ games. Now that you know my first 2 picks, 1st and 2nd place are still up for grabs. Which way do you think the next team will go? Finishing second place last year was the Atlanta Falcons with an 8-9 overall record, and they were 4-2 in the division. And even though they swept Tampa Bay, they did not win, did not make the playoffs either. However, this year they ranged from a +10 to a +240 to win the NFC South, with their over-under for wins being at 7.5. Some of the best football games of the regular season last year was Falcons versus BUCS. And like I mentioned, the Falcons were able to sweep Tampa Bay last year. In fact, after the first 6 games, Atlanta was 4-2, had beaten Philly, beaten Tampa Bay, and they were overall 3-0 in the NFC South to start things. In Week 10, they would lose to New Orleans in a close game. They never really were the same after that. And then there was a quarterback change the last 3 weeks of the season when my boy, Penix, stepped in. This is a guy I'm really high on, but in the NFC South, there might be the most question marks at quarterback overall as a division. When we start looking around at the offseason moves, on top of this, along with the draft, things are looking a lot better than they were last year. And they were in pretty good position, starting last year as well. Linebacker Nate Landman is now with the Rams, and I liked him. And they lost defensive tackle Grady Jarrett, who spent 10 years with Atlanta, playing in all games possible in this season in 7 of those 10 years. I think Nate Landman is super underrated. I think he's going to have a nice season with the Rams. Getting him for just over $1 million is like, wow. But anyways, other than that, that's really all the key losses. Let's go to the additions. Most to all of their help comes in on defense. Like defensive tackle Morgan Fox, they're hoping that he can replace Jarrett's production or something along those lines. You also got Leonard Floyd coming in, who has had 8.5 sacks in 5 straight seasons. They bring in safety Jordan Fuller, so now they've got a great safety crew. And they also added depth to their DB crew. PFF has the offensive line for Atlanta ranked at number 8, while they've got the defensive line ranked at number 30th. That's one of the biggest gaps that you'll see. And hey, maybe I'm falling for it again. I thought Atlanta would get more sacks last year, and they just are not getting sacks. But if you were to just take PFF's rankings, that would mean 3 of the top 5 worst D-lines are in the NFC South. And while that's possible, I just don't see that happening. I think both Carolina and especially Atlanta's D-line will be better this year. Though that doesn't mean I'm putting those 2 D-lines in the top 10 or anytime soon. A lot of that reason is actually because I think the offense is going to be better than Carolina's offense. So the longer that Atlanta offense is out there, the better it will be for that line. And lucky for us, it's Falcons BUCS Week 1. Their schedule comes off pretty tough at first. 3 of the first 5 games are at home. And then in my opinion, after going to San Francisco, it kind of dies down a bit. But yeah, the first 6 games are definitely going to be challenging. I could see Atlanta starting off 3-3 with Penix getting his first fresh start to the season rather than coming in late in the year. But if anyone could have it after only starting in a few games, I believe Penix is one of those guys that could just come out and have that kind of leadership right away. Back when the playoffs hosted 6 teams in each conference, it used to be half of those teams that made the playoffs would not make the playoffs the following year. But now it's less than that, now that 7 in each conference make the playoffs. Even with that said, there's still 1 or 2 teams from every conference that seemingly comes out of nowhere, or just a team that didn't make the playoffs. I think Atlanta is one of these teams that is going to the playoffs. One of my biggest rules over the last few years has been do not underestimate Tampa Bay. But I'm going against one of my own rules here. Yeah, that's right. I've got the Atlanta Falcons winning this division. I've got Atlanta with a 4-2 division record, but I've got Tampa Bay with a 5-1 division record. My difference is I think Atlanta's going to have a better overall record, and that is going to give Atlanta the NFC South title. But I think it's going to be really close between Atlanta and Tampa Bay this year. And I definitely have Atlanta with the over on wins. Last but not least, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who won the division last year after going 10-7 overall with a 4-2 division record and lost in wildcard weekend. This year, their odds range from a -110 to about +100 to win the division, and their over-under win total is at 9.5. Okay, I put Tampa Bay in second place, but we still got to go over what's going to happen with them, so let's do that. While we've just begun with these division predictions, these are some of the least amount of losses that I've seen from a team yet. Maybe the biggest one for them is center Robert Hainsey went to Jacksonville, and that is a good move for the Jaguars, in my opinion. Then on the defensive side of the ball, linebacker KJ Britt has departed to Miami. Of significance, that's about it. After losing Britt, the BUCS would press the reload button on a bunch of linebackers. So they went ahead and signed 2 key linebackers, one Anthony Walker Jr., coming from Miami, and Hassan Reddick, both of them coming from 1-year deals. The rest of their free agency ads looks to be depth-related, guys like Charlie Heck and Michael Jordan. Another 1-year deal linebacker is Levante David. Good on the BUCS for keeping him around. We hear on the internet, for every prediction that is basically longer than a plus 200 odds, we call everything hot takes. But me, I'm going to change that. We're not going to call it hot takes around here. We're going to call these potentially great takes. Here's a potentially great take for you now. All right, so I've got the prediction that Tampa Bay is going to lose to Atlanta week 1, right? And there's potential that they start 0-2 or maybe even 1-3 after the first 4 games. They go to Houston after Atlanta, and they've got Philly in week 4. Even though they beat Philly last year, it'd be hard to do it again, right? Well, my potentially great take is that once this happens, if this does happen, that you're going to see all kinds of people come out of the woodwork for this. They're going to call the BUCS overrated of the last couple of years. They're going to call Baker Mayfield definitely overrated. They're going to say he'll never duplicate those numbers that he put up last year. That was just like a one-time fling. For some reason, people are going to say this. Afterwards, I think the BUCS get hot. I think the BUCS get real hot, and they start rattling off some wins, and I think they are going to rattle off the rest of the NFC South. They're going to win 5 straight NFC South games, and by then, nobody's going to want to play them. So keep your eyes out for this. That was this week's edition of Potentially Great Take, brought to you by Armchair Army's Tactical Snacks. Eat and comment responsibly. PFF has the BUCS offensive line ranked at number 6, and they've got the defensive line ranked at 27. And it's official, PFF does not like the NFC South's D-line at all. None of them. And call me crazy, but I'm going to go ahead and disagree here. Tampa Bay was number 6 in total sacks, and they were top 5 against the run last year. And just off of those 2 stats alone, would already tell you, okay, this is not, one of the 5 or 6 worst defensive lines. They largely brought back the same team as well, and they restocked on linebacking crew that's going to help the D-line and the secondary. When fully healthy, that makes for a pretty scary linebacking crew. And because of the way they drafted this year, which was solid, by the way, they might have the best wide receiving trio as well in the NFL. Also, don't agree with PFF on the offensive line. They have Tampa Bay's offensive line ranked ahead of Minnesota's, and I'll have to believe that when I see it. I've got the BUCS, as I've already told you, with a 5-1 divisional record, and I've got them with 10-7 overall. And I could have just screwed myself here, but I'm going for it. I'm all in on Atlanta. But with that said, guys, that's going to do it for the NFC South preview. Be sure to let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Place 1 through 4th and their over-under on wins. And if you enjoy these divisional previews and other sports as well, like the NBA, I love to cover the NBA and the NFL, then this is the place that you want to be. So subscribe for more of America's sports, and you'll see me in the next one. The next one is going to be the AFC North. That's right. I got my old Saints t-shirt on. I'm a huge Drew Brees fan. Also a huge Alvin Kamara fan, too. He's also on the shirt.